Welcome, everybody, to episode 22 of PT Shop Talk. On this episode, we talk about our therapy passion projects, what really sparks joy for us, what gets our creative energies flowing, and we finish up with our top 5 favorite comedians. With me, as always, is Nick Guniguhu Doling and Jeremy Get Her Done Van Klompenberg.
Yeah, get her done.
Yeah,
That sounds
Jeremy,
accurate.
your nickname's just, I'm sorry, I just paint you as this country bumpkin, and I apologize.
I am.
Oh, okay,
I was
maybe
gonna wear a
appropriate.
cutoff. I should have worn a cutoff plaid.
Yeah,
There you
I
go.
would have fit. I would have
Vader.
felt better about the nickname. I didn't know what your comedy pursuits were, so I figured with Nick I was pretty safe going with Eddie Murphy. So
Yeah, it is. Gunny Boo Boo. And Puerto Rican Lou.
yeah,
Oh,
that stands out. So
that's definitely a spoiler.
what? Don't do that. Before we get started with the full episode, though, I do need to add something. Last time I said that I would shout out the articles I used on our last episode, and I didn't. And I went to edit them in, and I realized
They're
Wow.
inadmissible as evidence anymore,
I'm-
anyways.
pretty crappy at like editing post.
Overruled.
Sustained. So I just
You
thought I'd
can't
throw
do
them out here right away, just in case people are like listening because they were pissed off and they wanted to talk about it. So the first one that a large chunk base of what I went off of was an article from Rheumatology from 2015 called A Critical Evaluation of the Trigger Point Phenomenon.
Irrelevant.
Too late. So that's from Quinter was the main author on that article. It's a good place to start. Like I said, it'll give you a lot of references to go delve into the different things that we talked about. And the second one was a little bit based off that and kind of just a thought process. The article is called Why Are Assumptions Passed Off as Established Knowledge? And this was actually from Medical Hypotheses in 2020. Weissman was the main author on that one. So that's kind of a cool article too, because it actually goes into 3 different fallacies. So myofascial pain syndrome, shoulder impingement, and what's the other one?
Journal Club today was on how antiquated shoulder impingement is as a diagnosis and how we moved on to subacromial pain syndrome.
And now there's,
I don't disagree with that. I don't.
And that was about subgrouping subacromial pain syndrome further, correct? Was kind of
Correct.
right.
Into to help you guide your interventional strategy.
Yeah, which I
even
think's
with the
okay.
even with the subgrouping, it says in there there's overlap.
Yeah, because
That's weird.
we
Yeah.
you know, that's what we teach the kids in MSK is, you know, subacromial pain syndrome versus impingement or rotator cuff related pain syndrome or the myriad of other things. But students do struggle a little bit with like, well, you know, like
Semantics?
a partial rotator cuff tear can still fall under that umbrella. And it's like, well, that doesn't, well, now we have a really specific thing that we're also trying to put under a broad umbrella. So they really struggled with that.
I don't think it's yeah. I'm not going to say I'm the expert of these articles because you know I'm not reading them every day, but it's not exactly that's exclusive. I mean, it would fall under one of those categories.
Correct. But previously, it just fell under this huge umbrella of like non-specific shoulder pain, pretty much. And students would be like, "Well, that's very specific to have a rotator cuff tear." And it's like, well, you know, I could have,
but it's not. But
tear.
the thing that students, the things that students I don't think understand right now is that it might be a very specific diagnosis, especially when it's in isolation like that, like it's an acute or subacute. Boom, you know what happened. Somebody like my buddy Vito had a punching bag fall down, and he went to grab it, right, and that's how he partially tore his labrum. I think it was.
Told him he was supposed to punch that thing instead of grab it.
Yeah, or make me 2-person buddy lift. But
did it have the sticker on? Did he forget to look?
But now, what I'm going to get at though,
Team
is,
lift.
You know, even when it's a subacute thing, let's say it's not completely ruptured, requiring surgery. I mean, interventionally, it doesn't markedly change what you do, and I think that's important to know too. And students,
Correct.
I think that's one of the biggest things I learned coming out of school. I think the light bulb moments that we went back to, you know, months ago.
And I'll still find some students that because they don't know exactly which it falls under, like it just freezes them in terms of treatment. They're like, come on, there's some impairments to treat. Let's go.
Let's
go.
Yeah.
Right.
We can get it.
I think that Yeah, that's just the overarching. But yeah, it was interesting because I was like, that'll probably help the students out if we get a little bit of, because they run into that too when you talk about like practice guidelines with like neck and back pain, and you got your 4 buckets. But then we also talk about structure. It doesn't matter if the mobility deficit's coming from a disc or a facet, probably not, right? But it's something we still want them to think about and rationalize through and become a critical thinker. But
Yeah, that's
it might adjust your treatment where you start,
Overlap
the
as well.
things you try initially. We always say that you want
to. We'll do any of those things occur in the
somewhere,
spine.
right?
I mean, this is something I've told students for years. I don't. Does any lumbar spine injury truly occur in isolation? Like, so even if it is a disc, is it only a disc? Probably not.
No, I
logic
mean,
serves to,
nerve,
if a tree falls in the
muscle,
woods,
yeah.
maybe.
I mean, what
I
we
also-
all
I
can
also had a
agree
tri-
on is there is no trigger points involved with the back pain, but
no, there
other than
definitely
that,
I also brought some research here. It's the Journal of Dolan Kicking Casey's Ass.
Oh, 2022?
Volume
Yeah.
3,
ahead of print.
2022,
Ahead of print.
pages 167.
Oh,
It doesn't matter.
whoa, boom.
Oh.
Felt that through the computer.
Yeah,
No,
you should have.
we're coming in hot tonight. I like it.
I love our profession too, because there was lots of people who were like, oh, those were good arguments, but I still believe in trigger points and I'm going to treat them. I'm like, okay, yeah.
Well, you can have it. That's where the world should be, right? I can respect your opinion. I can respect where you're coming from, but that doesn't mean that if I feel strongly, I guess, how do I put it, strongly in the vein that they do exist, and there is some other supportive literature to support that as well. That gives me more than just my own echo chamber. I can, follow that pursuit as well, but still respect that you may not have the same exact philosophy as me.
Yeah, and I think that just starting the conversation helps guide your career as you go too.
Mm-hmm. It makes you think critically. Like, and since then, I'll be honest. Like, I've done a lot of needling again this week, and every time I do it, I'm thinking very even more so about it.
Just
You're like,
am I
really there?
Is this really a top
Is it
band?
really
And am I
there?
really identifying? And once they're twitching like crazy, I'm like, suck it, Hanson.
yeah, right. What a butthole. This is nothing but trigger points in here. All right,
I'm like,
that's
oh,
fair.
somebody get my phone and record this, send it to him.
Yeah. Call
Nick-
Casey, tell him to cancel his appointment with his patient. I need to get him on Zoom right now.
Nick's just going. This research in regards to palpation doesn't apply to me.
Well, okay.
Those people are
we could go on
garbage.
I don't want to go on a deep dive into this, but my belief though is that I think people are blessed with like different levels of hands and skills when it comes to palpation. And I think we see that as far as clinicians go, people who have maybe a better capacity to initially grasp manual therapeutic skills.
Hashtag
I think,
blessed.
and where, yeah, blessed, baby.
Hashtag blessed.
and I think where that stems from, I was always taught that and ingrained when I think I shared that I was
Hola.
lab tech assistant. No, before Ola. When I was in undergrad, I worked at Merit Care, now Sanford and Fargo, and I drew a lot of blood. And it was always, impressed on us. You got to train it. It's a skill, just, doing a phlebotomy. But at the same time, some people were just blessed with better ability to identify veins, anchor them down, and do that. It's just the way the world is. Everybody has different skills and different abilities that supersede others.
Yeah, there's definitely some of that. I see that for sure when we practice manipulation. I mean, some kids are soft-handed, just in a good way. I mean, they can take a head, support it, but it doesn't feel like they're cranking on a neck. They get into position and they can do that velocity thing, where other kids seem so heavy-handed that they feel like they're just like trying to thrust, and it's like, well, you don't have to thrust somebody. Like, it's just a continuation of the movement through.
They're trying to squeeze your eyeballs out.
yeah, they're like the
you're in
mountain
Stranger
from Game
Things.
of Thrones.
Ooh,
Yeah,
I finished the first
how
half
far
already.
are you in? All
Finished
the way?
it. Finished
Same
it.
here.
July
I'm
1st.
We're
Let's
okay.
go.
J-Bone.
Was that scary?
Were you scared?
No.
Really?
I'm only
You
2
know,
episodes in, so careful.
So 2 episodes. I'll admit, episode 2, I was getting a little goosebumpy when like they've already established, hey, if you see the clock, this is not good. And Fred starts like walking in the woods. I got a little goosebumpy because that's the stuff. The tension was really well built.
Yeah, so far so good. I mean, it's different. It's so different, but I'm okay with it. It's it's always interesting. I mean, these kids look like my dad now, though, which is
No kidding.
taking me out of it a little
Just
bit.
let that out. Just let that out go though, because I
Yeah,
think it's the most
trying to.
well-written season they've ever done.
Did you call the end, Nick? Did you make the connection?
I partially did.
I partially did too.
Yep. And the moment that dude showed up, I just looked at Michelle. I'm like, he's bad. I'm like, there's like just something about him. Creepy little guy.
Yep.
But how good an actor.
Yeah, really good. Really good.
So obviously,
can't wait.
No spoilers. No spoilers.
I'm gonna have to leave right now. Sorry, guys. You're up to finish it.
My experience with it, when I saw episode 4, I was blown away. I'm like, wow. I like left, and it was awesome. Like, great climax. Felt like you were watching a movie. And
well done.
Yeah. And then I'm like, okay. And then I think 5 and 6 were still pretty strong, really layered. And then 7's just just amazing. I don't know, hour 40 minutes. I think it was.
Can't wait. Yeah.
See, I don't know how to put the episodes together. Like, it just blended together. I just kept watching on repeat. It's good.
My wife is struggling with it a little bit, just means it's like a little more horror movie, I would say, than the other one so far. So she's struggling with that a little bit, but well, just keep playing it. She'll watch it eventually. So
I think it's wait till you get to the like Jeremy's talking about. Wait till you get to 7, and it does a great job just explaining a whole lot of stuff. And I'm not opposed to that.
Full circle.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to a little more exposition, especially in a thriller.
Well, I think if you're a good, and we talked about this on like our movies, second time watch movies and disappointing movies. Like, if you write a good, solid story, like, you should be able to explain it. You shouldn't have to use Deus Ex Machina type stuff. You shouldn't have to use assumption based stuff. Like, it should be wrapped up. Like, you should be able to sit down with me and like explain it to me if you wanted, if you so chose.
They tie a nice bow.
Totally.
This is very good. Very good.
I will say, I don't want to spoil it for Case, but Jeremy, I'll say, since you see it, there's a lot that goes on at 7.
I can mute you from my end if I
but when he kind of explains like what his role was in the 50s, if you follow me, that was, to me, that was like genius. I'm like, I kept trying to figure out how they were going to do that, but I'm like, freaking brilliant.
That I like didn't put together until right before it, but like some of the simulation stuff, it was like, that dude's got a bigger role. So, but
yeah,
that's cool.
Great stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of fear, so I was listening to the old radio this morning.
You talking about the 1996 Mark Wahlberg film?
No,
FM band.
That creeped me out too when the dog head like comes through the dog door, but that sits with me. No, I was listening to the radio and they were talking about like a hot air balloon hitting a train. Like, did you guys hear about this?
Jeez, really?
No.
I don't know how like a hot air balloon hits a train.
Everybody okay? People,
I don't believe so.
Oh my gosh.
They didn't die though. Like, they hit a train and survived with a hot air balloon, which is crazy. But my wife's always wanted to do a hot air balloon. That's like a dream of hers. And I am terrified of heights.
Me too.
So,
really? Boy, really?
Yeah. Well, absolutely horrified.
Roller coasters? Nah.
Yeah, I can clean my gutters on the first floor, but not the second. That's like where I sit. Like, but I also have like, and that got me thinking, and I've talked about this before, like irrational fears too. Like, I feel like a fear of heights is rational. Like,
depending,
right.
Completely.
I mean, sometimes well-founded. Yeah,
you should.
You're validated. You're validated.
To a point.
Jeremy.
I mean, if you're being a little careless, yeah.
You know what gravity does?
Boom. Yeah. So my fear of heights has led me to avoid hot air ballooning. It's led me to avoid skydiving.
Check.
Roller coasters, not a huge fan. I'll do them for my wife and my kids because
a bucket list thing, you won't skydive.
No, never.
Just
Zero
to
interest.
Did it. Never.
Why would you ever jump out of a perfectly good plane? Like, ever?
Do you guys ever see Point Break?
Like,
loser.
Yeah. No, I always say I try to avoid things that invite death into my life.
Correct.
Well, why not? That's what makes it. That's what gives you life, man.
There are things trying to kill me every single day. I don't feel like I need to give it a step up.
Yep.
I don't know.
So that's also,
we're all wired different. I'm not like a freaking freak about it, but
yeah, I didn't know you were such a daredevil. Look at you.
Risk mitigation.
I do want to skydive someday. That's definitely on my bucket list for sure.
Yeah, I have this like weirder, like I won't do zip lines.
Oh, that's
I don't want to do
fun.
that either. I don't.
That's a
I
two.
am.
So that's a two banger for me. So super afraid of heights. And then I'm also, apparently this is a very irrational fear. I'm afraid of losing my hand in the zip line. I feel like I'd go on
That's
that
irrational.
sucker, boom, fingers gone in no time. Like that's always my assumption if I zip
You know
line.
that there's like a whole harness though.
Yeah,
and
people say
apparatus
there's
involved.
brakes and crap, but your hand has to operate that if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
What if I reach up for the
Yeah,
brake,
but it's
I
like a
just grab
lever.
the line.
You don't
and
grab the cable or put your fingers underneath the
what
wheel.
happens if I do?
Then
You're in
dumb.
trouble.
Because I'm
Then
so
you're-
afraid.
then you're dumb.
You deserve to lose all
You
those.
don't
fingers,
understand. I'm so afraid of the heights that I'm not thinking rationally to begin with. And I'm
Your
like, I gotta
phobias are
slow this
driven.
sucker out before I die. Boom, jam my hand up into the stopping mechanism just to make sure I live.
Oh my god!
And then
And
I'm fingerless. These are my money makers.
so then, do you live though in that scenario?
Do I live?
In
Yes,
that scenario where
but
you
I wouldn't want to.
sacrifice your fingers to do
Do you relearn palpation after that?
that.
No need. No need.
Zone 4.
I'd be exactly
No
the
bueno.
same therapist without or with them at that point. So yeah, I was it got me thinking like, so I have this weird irrational fear of that. Do you guys have any irrational fears? I'm talking like irrational.
Irrational-
Well,
or
no,
snakes?
I feel like all mine are very rational. Snakes,
I have
spiders,
a massive
heights.
phobia of snakes.
Oh,
Really?
I hate them.
And when anybody who touches a snake and they're like, but I got a phobia. If you can hold
Dirty.
a snake,
Yeah.
If you can hold a snake and you don't have a phobia, like I have,
Yeah,
a legit phobia.
100%. Like
I freeze. I'm like,
I just
trying to-
high stepped on Sunday. I saw one in the grass for the first time in like 4 years.
where?
It's a whole nother story. My brother-in-law was trying to sink his boat. But
Oh,
while
the boat
he
thing.
was doing that, I was handing him stuff and actually jumping in and out of the water. And I got out onto the bank.
Was the snake in the water?
No, but it was like
that's a fear. I don't mind
that thing-
snakes, but
it was a little garter snake, but not little. Like,
Yeah.
it was probably
That's a
3
python.
feet long, and I
They
mean
bite your toe.
an inch and a
Take your
half,
toe.
2 inches in diameter. That thing slithered under something, and I like high step. I was out of the way. No thanks. No
screw
thanks.
your boat. I'll
I've-
see you later.
I have not seen a
luck.
snake in a few years either, and
Cool.
I've tried to face it though. Like we went to Michelle and I went to San Diego Zoo like 15 years ago and went through that whole area. I've gone through reptile gardens and I do okay. I used to.
What if the glass breaks?
That's irrational.
What happens
Could
like
happen.
if you were at like one of the things where they bring the python out and they're like, which one of the small children want to hold it? And you're like, I'd like to try. And like, sir, you're
I
a grown
actually-
man.
I
But
do
I'm
think
terrified.
now I've taken enough ridicule from our oldest son Connor about it.
Yeah.
I might just try to face that fear and like touch it with a finger.
Ooh, icky.
So slimy.
Snakes are the worst, man.
Agreed.
Yeah, I've had a few patients that are like totally into snakes and they tell me, like, oh yeah, it just sits on my shoulder and we watch Netflix. And I'm like, that's super
It's not
gross.
watching Netflix. It's just waiting to choke you to death and eat.
Yeah,
You're
you're not wrong. Yeah. I have one other irrational fear, and that's like and this is super irrational because it doesn't run in my family at all. But I'm like super afraid of developing schizophrenia. Like if I'm sitting around home and like I hear something, I'm like, oh god,
that me?
It's starting. Like, is that
that
a real
me?
noise? Like, and it freaks me out all the time. Like I can't get over
Wow.
it. And like I really have to like sit and like it freezes me like a snake would freeze you guys. I'm like, is it the moment?
Okay,
Is
I
this
can't
happening?
say. Okay, not that I'm hearing things.
That's very
but
specific. Yeah.
Similar,
It's super
maybe a
rational.
similar vein, Casey. Like, we all hold leadership positions, right? Sometimes that comes with having to have crucial conversations, as they say, and over time, I've identified where I try to like play them out in my head, and sometimes like I found out be in the shower, just like kind of talking out like a potential rebuttal, right? Or some piece of that. And I wonder, like Michelle's like, who are you talking to? I'm like, oh, I'm just, going through this whole meeting I got planned.
That's just
Like,
the
am I just
schizophrenia.
Am I just
Yeah.
getting crazy? Like,
Are you
Yeah.
sure Michelle's real? Have you confirmed that?
well,
Yeah.
I hope so. I hope
Maybe
my
you're
kids are
just
real.
in a padded cell right now talking to a hot dog, and that's what your
This-
life is.
the whole podcast.
This
is in my
whole
head.
thing is just made up. You don't know.
That's like a shitty twist to a movie.
Truman Show.
Super shitty. That's
This is
the
what you're
kind of
trying to
director
put
I'd be.
together. Yeah. And at the end, Nick found out he was talking to
The
a hot
corn dog. Oh, my life is great. I can't believe all the things in therapy I've done that have sparked joy in my life.
Yeah.
Nice
It's
segue.
the segue.
All my
yeah.
passion projects.
Well,
Yeah.
you're mining some weird phobia stuff here.
Yeah, no, we could do phobia.
We should segue in, but we don't know if Jeremy has schizophrenia yet either.
I'm not sure.
That's
I'm
really
not
the
sure.
only answer you can give. That's why I live in
Yeah.
fear all the time. You don't know. Like
Yeah.
I've had patients that like have been diagnosed with it, and just talking to them about it has not helped my irrational fear at all. Because it's like that's horrifying. Because it's like, yep, like I know the demons I see aren't real. Like rationally, I understand that there's not like ghosts and monsters chasing me all day.
Mhm.
But like eventually you see that for 10-15 years and you really start to wonder, like, is it just everybody else can't see it? Like,
you saying this isn't?
Are we in the Matrix?
Yeah. Are you talking hypothetically, Casey, or do you really see monsters chasing you?
not me.
Because now I'm worried about you. Okay.
Oh, talk about patience. This isn't like,
Do you want
hey,
to?
hey, my friend's got like weird sores on their downstairs. Like, what should they do? It's not one of those things where that's actually me.
Oh, okay. This is like I got a friend who's
I know a guy.
I know a guy, like it's super itchy down there all the time. It's weird.
He's got warts, but
yeah.
they're
No, I don't
treatable,
know
right?
a guy that sees demons. Mostly when he's on his podcast. It's no, I've had patients like obviously that I treat an interesting population with a lot of stuff going on. So I've treated definitely more than a handful of folks with schizophrenia and like being treated for it. And so it just, it has not helped my fear at all because like their stories are crazy. And like, again, like somebody, they might have somebody that's a significant other or a family member. And like they, as far as their schizophrenia would tell them, they are a demon. And like, it's like, they have to do everything in their power not to harm this person.
Yeah.
And
it's crazy. Like, I mean, it's scary to me. Like that's
that's and I don't mean to be, and we're not trying to be insensitive.
No,
because that's a scary world to live in.
Super scary. Yeah. I'm not meaning to downplay that, like, but that has fed into my irrational fear. Like, cause I'm like, oh man.
Well, I think it's relatively safe to say that there's a higher prominence of just various mental illness, maybe not just schizophrenia, but other mental illnesses that people have and they're battling. And some of them are undiagnosed, some of them are, but the more you work with people, whether you're talking about patients or other employees, coworkers, I mean, it starts coming out.
Yeah, the struggles people have, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it makes my fear of zip lining seem like pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I mean, we should end on that and then talked about passion projects.
Yeah, let's rewind.
I'm always over the weight limit on zip lines, so that's why
probably a
mine's more rational.
You're safe.
My irrational fear has even progressed with zip lining because people are like, oh, just you like wear leather gloves and stuff. Like you don't have to worry about that. And I'm like, yeah, but what if I throw my hand up to like hit the brakes and like an eagle comes and pulls my glove off? Boom, no fingers. Like
it's getting better and better.
I have played a lot of zip line
Do you think
scenarios.
the glove's gonna save your fingers?
Well, I don't know. At least
the wheels go. Oh my god.
Well,
let's move on.
It would maybe lop my fingers off, but it would be held into the gloves so I could reattach them.
Okay,
I feel like this is therapeutic for Casey right now.
Yeah, this is necessary.
I think this is good.
Yeah.
If a lion came into your house, would you jump on the zip line to get away?
How big was the lion?
Yeah, that's a good point. And is it tame?
This is the big lion. Not the baby kitty cat that we turned into later. This is a big ass cat.
I mean, I think I would zip line to save my life. I would have to imagine.
There you go. Worst case scenario, you'll step up. You'll stand up and commit.
Yeah.
And like, oh, like my son was on the other side of a zip line or something. Yeah, I'm burning through that line with my hands like some
There
sort
you
of
go.
action star. Don't get me
Jeez.
wrong. Take off my
So you've
shirt,
got
wrap
it.
it around.
You got
You got it.
You got it.
You've got
Like
it.
if a snake was like strangling one of my kids, like a big boa or something, I would step in. Like it's not like I'm gonna step back and be like, oh my God, I would do everything I could to stop it.
Yeah. So yeah, I can't say I have any fears that are like so strong where it would be like, we've had a good run, son. It's been a good 6 years. Can't do anything. Like, I mean, there's nothing that strong, but
That's paralyzing for sure.
yeah, that would be wild. And I'm sure there's people that are probably that strongly afraid of things, but let's talk
Not
about
me.
something happier. Passion
Yes.
projects, sparking joy. How do I get over my irrational fears and still live my life? That is what we're going to talk today about, is some of those things. And I know Nick and I have talked about this a lot, and we've talked with Jeremy too. Like Nick, especially always says, you got to find things that like creatively get you going and creatively just give you another outlet, give you a break from the day-to-day stuff, but still kind of guide you in a direction. So today we probably have lots of those passion projects, not therapy related, but we're going to just kind of narrow it down to our therapy related stuff, or at least health and wellness related side projects for us, and things in the last 12, 15 years that we've really found have really helped out with some of that creative stuff. So I think I wanted to just start out obviously with this whole thing we're doing right here. I thought that's kind of a cool way to talk about it. It was something I've listened to podcasts on and off probably since like 2007. Always thought it was a cool medium. Always thought it would be something fun to do. But,
Early adopter.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, yeah.
Early adopter.
Yeah. Joe Rogan wasn't even around when I started listening to him. I think maybe Mark Maron had a podcast back then, but and
Days.
yeah. And as time went on, it was like, you just keep kind of pushing it back. And then when we went to private practice this last year, we went and sat in one of their podcast breakout sessions they had, and it's like, man, that'd be fun. And Nick happened to be in the same one. So we were like, I got to give Nick credit. He was like, hey, let's just do this thing, right? Like, figure it
Press
out.
record.
Go, and that's what I would tell people too, is like doing a podcast. Like if you have something you're passionate about, yeah, it's pretty fun. Like just to sit down week to week and kind of think about topics to talk about and how you're going to go about it, and doing the research, and then getting together with you guys and just shooting the breeze has just been super fun. Again, the
Agreed.
entry point on podcasting for people that are thinking about to listen to this, it's not bad. I mean, most of you have a mic on your computer, mic on your laptop. Even if you had your cell phone, you could do it off of those. And really, the photo editing stuff, I use free software. I can't think of what it's called right now.
And you're the tech guy. I can't help you.
Yeah. But it's just
Zip line.
Yeah, it's audio something. Anyways, what do you Google free audio editing stuff? And it doesn't take long to learn how to use that stuff's pretty easy. If you go to anchor.com is the website we use to get things posted. That's supported by Spotify, but from there you can post to iTunes, Amazon. Boy, it doesn't cost you anything. You can host all that stuff for free there. It's pretty cool. Really the only cost to this whole thing is because we do it via Zoom. So Zoom does have limits. If you go over 2 people, you do have to pay a monthly fee. So do bite that cost, but it's $14 a month. So I mean, it's nothing major. And if it's just one person, 2 people,
we need to help you foot that bill, because that was like a low key, like, guys, chip in your shit.
No, I mean,
I didn't know. I didn't know
until now either.
Things we ever really talked about. But it was just Zoom's just for me, Zoom's an easy medium to use, so we just went that route. But I'm sure there's lots of other things. And if you're gonna, like I said, if you're gonna record by yourself, or if 3 or 4 people and you're gonna get together live, you avoid that cost right away. Nick and I did it on Zoom for free for a long time before Jeremy stole our hearts. So.
And the wolf pack turned into 3.
Oh, yep.
Well, I think no, man, you're nailing that. And it was I think the genesis of it, like you mentioned PPS, and we both were in the podcast for a long time. But the whole idea that like we could share what our chosen careers are, what we're passionate about there, but we can have fun too. We have other sides to us, other layers to who we are.
We're like onions.
Yeah. Yeah. We have families, we have
we turn brown.
other interests, and it's fun to be able to meld that stuff together. Like I said, last week was fun as heck because we could take a therapy topic at its core, but try something new, try a format that allows us to be a little humorous, try to, pass on some information, but not think too much of ourselves along the way. Be able to laugh at ourselves. And I think it's been fun, and it's great when you can do it with some friends, which I consider you guys good friends, and it just makes it so easy. It's like it feels like the tightest core group of guys that I've had since like high school. Honestly,
yeah, it's been pretty cool. I mean, and just the back and forth all week long, just shooting emails and texts, and it's fun. And there's a lot of people, but there's people in my life now that like the show, and it's like cool to know that there's people out there that every week kind of look forward to it. Like I'm just creating fun for people, and creating happy stuff for people.
Help them on their commute, right? Like we have people that are traveling, and big shout out. I'm going to shout out Jason Fernholz, or one of our PTs with Big Stone, traveling. I think he commutes about an hour every day to our clinic, and he said he was listening to our WrestleMania podcast and had some good laughs. And I mean, it's fun just to be able to.
He's a Stang for life too.
Oh yeah, he was a Stanger, baby.
Mustang. What?
You're in Jeremy's heart.
Yep. I don't know. Do you say he's part of the Stampede, or he's in the corral? I don't even know what.
I don't know. You're the alum.
He's an alum as well. So
I know, we'll have to.
He's in the corral.
You hear that, Fernie? You're gonna have to.
You're in the corral
whenever this drops.
That's the corral, right in there.
Ooh, we need a logo. C
right in here. The corral.
Corral over the heart.
The corral.
I can't do it. There we go.
Oh, Nick went with the real heart. That was nice.
Well, remember that you guys didn't watch UFC, right?
No.
Mario Yamasaki would always
We're not that hardcore.
Yeah, that's like real stuff. That's like hurting people.
Hurtful.
Yeah. So anyways, that's been my most recent passion project's been this thing, and it's been a blast, and I've loved it. So I will pass the mic on. We can see what else you guys like to rock and roll to get yourselves motivated and get those creative juices flowing.
Yeah.
What do you got?
Roll to you. I kind of jumped on the podcast too. So obviously this thing right here is awesome. And it's another avenue to fill me up. And about 7 years ago, I was able to launch a strength and conditioning program in the summers here, sports performance enhancement program called EV Performance, summer of 2015. And that's been something I really look forward to every summer, still having helping hand in that. We've had some different iterations of it over the last couple of years since selling to Avera, but really the bones of it have remained the same. I think I've always had a steady presence in it. We've had different opportunities to kind of try to hand off, but unfortunately individuals have come and gone, and awesome to wherever life's taken them too. So I'm still in it and still promoting it, and still getting fired up by it. Actually, this year I was kind of on the fence on how much I wanted to still kind of run it, because we got, we're just continuing growing, and we always have issues we got to handle in our region. So I was, kind of on the fence. And as we got into February, I was reached out to by a few of the sports groups here, one related to wrestling, one related to hockey, about like how much we're still doing with it, and if we can put some stuff together. And it just fired me back up. And it got me creatively, searching for more ways to just get better in that too. And I think that's probably what makes it more exciting. Like whether I'm treating patients or whether I'm working on sports enhancements, like what can you continue to learn because it doesn't get stale, or so that it doesn't get stale,
Yeah, and that stuff changes a lot. I'm sure even in the 7 years you guys have done it, looks different now than did. I mean, like when I was in high school, the sports acceleration stuff was so popular.
But it's like different. Like we talked about with Dave when Dave was on here about how we grew up and it was like, here's your Flex magazine, here's your Iron Man magazine. We didn't have a lot of that. So that was really the germ of the idea. Like, what would I have wanted back then when I was 12, 13, 14, 15, like getting into this thing. So we still have like Oli lifting is a big key to it. Teaching people proper squatting, deadlift form, but this year more than any, we've always done some speed work. We've always done some acceleration work, but this year more than anything, we're adding a lot more explosive and dynamic pieces to that. Things that we can use some equipment, but predominantly don't really need it. But getting kids to learn how to change their body position in short spaces and become explosive. So I'm really excited about that.
That's cool. What ages do you guys start at?
We've gone as low as 10 now.
What is it? This is aside, as maybe this could be a whole pod, but like, what are your guys' philosophy on like young kids, 5, 6 years old?
How young?
I think that
5, 6 it doesn't matter. That maybe that's.
I don't think it really matters. I think as long it comes down to like, can you teach the most correct technique, right? I don't want to be like we've talked about movement Nazis, and you don't want to become a movement Nazi and paralyze people with fear about how deliberate to make their movements or follow an exercise. But definitely you can also you can't be on the other end. You can't be sloppy, and you see that like. It's really amazing what you can see in these larger classes. Like our largest class this year, we have a couple that are close to 12. One is at 12 and one's at like 9 or 10. And even within the same class, you're going to see such a broad array of what I say, like
movement competency.
Yeah, movement aptitude, right?
Yeah.
And like how they can pick up stuff and like their body positioning, moving away, doing an Olympic lift and having it be a hip dominant movement versus a shoulder dominant movement, right? Mm-hmm. And doing those things that are not only from an injury prevention standpoint, because I think that's the bare minimum. Like that's the bare minimum we can do is like not hurt a kid or allow themselves. But also, like I tell kids all the time, like they don't really care about that because they're not injured. They like unless an injury is right in front of somebody, they don't really care. Injury prevention doesn't motivate anybody. Unless
it's like a move. You talk about like a moving target, right? Like injury prevention. It's like pretty broad, and
unless you've been through something catastrophic, you don't really care. I mean, you're invincible until you're not. Yeah. I know those are other flaws. I'm just regurgitating some other people's philosophies, but the getting back to it, what does motivate them though is like, hey, this is when you do it the right way, you're no longer going to be hitting plateaus so early. And you're going to be able to advance a lot better and a lot smoother. And your trajectory is going to be more linear rather than all the ups and downs that, typically do happen.
Yeah, I just asked because I don't know if it was ACSM I saw not too long ago came out with like exercise recommendations for like kids under 12 or something. And, again, it was like no body weight lifting only, right? Like don't lift weights.
And what drove that? Do you recall?
I think it's just antiquated thought processes of like you're gonna stunt growth more and things.
Like the growth plate issue.
Yeah, like
that's getting more and more antiquated. That's being disproven.
Well, and it's silly because again, ACSM I believe was what came out with this, and they also kind of came out with a garbage running one recently too. But it's like things they recommend. It's like jumping, trampoline, gymnastics. But don't do anything more than your body weight when you're squatting. It's like, what is the force on your joints?
Yeah,
jumping and doing gymnastics and stuff. It's like it's such a counter thought. Like, where do you?
And when you look at the inconsistencies that are out there and what people so let's get out of the journal stuff. But like, I just took a call the other day from a really awesome dad. Got to meet him. And he's got a son with aortic valve stenosis, and he wants him to do elite. And I'm like, yeah, we can definitely tailor some things, And I'm like, what are the precautions you're concerned about? He said, well, he's been told he can't do any maximum lifting. I'm like, okay, is he allowed to sprint? Yeah, sprinting's fine. Is he allowed to do other? And he's allowed to do all these other. He plays hockey, right? He does these other sports. And it wasn't a matter like that's not the moment to argue and debate.
No.
Because he's already learned or he's been told all these things. But you're like, if you look at the I guess the ejection fractions and the heart rate, the exertion fractions, factors associated with what we're going to be asking them to do. It's like, wow, just so inconsistent with what the recommendations are, right? From his perspective. Right. So, I mean, so what I'm saying is that there's still a lot of kind of bogus, nonsensical, non-logical advice that's still given out.
Yeah, I would, totally agree. That's why I was just wondering, like, from a program standpoint, like, and I think obviously my son wouldn't do well in a weightlifting program just from a attention standpoint, but like we have dumbbells and stuff around. My kids want to pick those up and lift, go to town, I say.
We have that. And our kids are, I'll have two of my kids in it again this year. My son Connor, this is his 4th year, I think, doing it. And my daughter Madeline, this will be her 2nd. So and she moves very well. She picks up everything very quickly and does solid there.
Yeah,
Connor's a little bit more of a movement challenge. So
yeah, it's just one of those like prevailing thoughts out there that I want to get your idea on and see what you guys thought, because
I
people
think
say it all
like,
the time, like don't lift those weights, 6-year-old, like you're done. You're going to be like 3'5" if you do that.
But you go, how do you just paint with that broad of a brush, right? Like if somebody is struggling with movement patterning and then you're like, oh, let's load it up, like, yeah, then we're
and
right?
If you go back, like the initial theory, let's just say theory, not because you can't even call it philosophy on it, it's just a theory.
Yep.
Wasn't it that because we'll just say the musculotendinous unit is contracting, the tendinous portion is going to be putting that type of force in the epiphysis, right? And it's going to close your growth plates out sooner, which that's really not anatomically how the body works at all.
No, like Wolf's Law.
I said anatomically, but physiologically.
Put it into normal person speak. What did you just say?
Yeah, like, so the thought was that because you're going to pick up a weight and lift it, the tendon that's connecting your muscle to your bone is going to be closing the growth plate down.
Yeah, and the really growth plate is where bone, if you guys talk about stem cells, bone growth, things like that, that's kind of where we start to have synthesis from those areas. Yep. So for those people that like have just heard that but don't understand the science behind it, that was the rationale, was like, oh, it's gonna create, because eventually those growth plates do solidify. At some point we stop growing. So
because the body just continues producing osteoblasts, right?
I haven't.
Right.
There's a lot of hormonal effects with that.
Jeremy is going to be about 8'5". But yeah, right. Your body signals it from just a DNA RNA synthesis. Like you hit a certain age and your body triggers, different things within it that says stop growing. Like
we had this conversation with my mom this weekend about coffee and how 30, 40 years ago.
Coffee.
You did, huh? Yeah,
wow.
30, so you know where I'm going, right?
You would have been 9 feet.
It's gonna stunt your growth.
Yep.
Yeah, what's the science behind that?
Yeah.
There's not even like a theory behind that.
Zero.
Right.
Yep.
Parents just didn't want their kids to drink coffee, so they told them
Mountain Dew won't, though.
Mountain stunts other growth, right? That was the old urban myth.
Huevos.
Yellow dye. Was it yellow dye?
Yellow 5.
Might as well not have sperm at that point. But yeah, it's just funny that stuff that. Yeah. Anyways, that's an aside.
No, we could do a whole pod on it sometime, and we could maybe we that's the one where we swing in Ashley as a guest sometime, because she's been helping out now, I think 3 or 4 years with the program, and we name dropped Ashley home last week, so I've been talking with her about getting on here as a guest sometime.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
But definitely a big passion.
So I didn't mean to interrupt. I do it all the time. That's my shtick.
I know.
How's your? You got more joy sparking from your conversation, or is it time to let Jeremy have the mic?
Let's spark.
No, I want to pass it to Jeremy, because we got to be time sensitive to our viewers, our listeners and viewers.
Yeah.
Not all of them are driving to Green Bay to listen to our pod.
Or are they?
Yeah.
Or are they? Honestly, like I guess I can't qualify this as a passion project because I haven't done anything with it yet.
That's the best kind of project.
It's in the hopper. Yeah. But man, I really geek out. Actually, it stems from like some of the stuff that we've just been talking about. Like I geek out over lifestyle medicine.
Okay.
I would love to find a way, whether it's just purely education, whether it's integrative into our practice, to just find ways to normalize some of those messages, right? Like about activity and about, like, we can get into imaging, we can get into just dumb recommendations that come from healthcare professionals every single day. My latest example, is doing a little bit of volunteer coaching for a 17 and under AAU team. And this kid, right, super athletic, right? He's like, well, my chiropractor told me I should never squat ever again.
Makes sense.
Like 17-year-old, like high school athlete.
Probably because his back
Really?
was sore for like
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Yep. Really, really like athletic kid. Great stuff, right? You talk about like, gosh, what are the joint forces that go on with running, with sprinting, with gymnastics, with body weight stuff? And
Something.
it's just like, but it's just, again, it's like you try to find the right ways to refute it. But a lot of times these messages are being heard from what people perceive as like knowledge sources.
Yeah.
MD, gosh, some of the stuff comes from surgeons, orthopedic surgeons. Don't squat ever again, right? Like, and you're like, how, he's like, well, my doctorate, that's wrong. It's like, but the second they hear it, it's just takes root so quickly.
And this is what fuels you, huh?
Anger.
I'm telling you, no, it's
Anger. Yeah.
This was meant to be uplifting, I thought.
He's the Hulk. No, it's not anger. It's like, no, it does amp me up. Is like, how do you bring that message across? Like, how do you, so just even with like our normal patients, like, how do you bring those things up in normal conversation? How do we change? Like, because again, it's like, we get to see people for such a short period of time, and it's like, can our interactions have a bigger impact outside of that, outside of just for that shoulder, outside of your hip pain, outside of your back pain? And yeah, I don't know, it'd be like,
it's empowering,
like the bigger,
right?
the bigger view would be like, how do we like transform healthcare? Because it's just,
that's the true conversation. Yeah, right.
When
we
people like,
about, I think you're getting me fired up, because like, shit, we hear about evolution of healthcare and the changing times, and how physical therapy is supposed to hold such a valuable role in all this. Like you said, lifestyle medicine, wellness, getting preventative care. Yeah. And yet, does it even freaking matter? No, because the AMA wields too much power politically. They're still approving surgeries that have been like, there's more and more evidence that they just don't work long term.
300, like, we got an insurance provider out here, like $300 copay to have a lumbar fusion, $50 copay for every PT visit. Wow. Like, what?
Yeah,
like, so
and they're amazing. It's like, how do they get there? Because they obviously from them, it's not a cost-effective model for them.
Zero. Yeah. So
because they end up having to come to therapy in 3 years anyways and pay those $50 copays.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. I like I said, it's not necessarily a project that's in play, but it's like, it is something that fuels me. It's something that, like, when you get up, it's like, because dang, like, anything can become monotonous over time, right? And it's like how do we still just try to bring that same energy of like because you can look at the bigger system and be like, wow, how is my one interaction ever going to change the system, right? But I don't know, that is something that fuels me. It's like, I think we are positioned well to do those things, and like you said, does it matter, or can we change it? I don't know, but I don't know, it's something that amps me up, and something that I like to, like, amps me up to continue to learn and educate and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's great. That was just a natural like progression from like the TPS stuff for me too. Was like, man, that TPS, yep, it filled some gaps for me, but even then it was like, all right, this isn't the answer. We've talked about that before, but like maybe this is the next step is like, can I just like address all this stuff these patients are dealing with? Because there's just so much more than therapy. And like, if we're going to be these frontline gatekeepers and be a good place when people come to us just to be healthier, like we need to be prepared for that. Have you looked into the EIM lifestyle medicine cert?
I have not closely. I've done 2 or 3 different courses on MedBridge. That was something I sat in on 2 or 3 different courses at PPS as well. And you just go like, how do you, what's the best way to integrate it? How do you make it make sense?
Yeah, and I'm not here to shill EIM at all, and I've never taken the courses, but I've looked at doing that too. That's cert. Because I would think, we talk about from a company standpoint, like what are like continuing ed we should have. Like, man, I would love if our company just offered that. Like, hey, who wants to be certified in lifestyle medicine? Like, we'll start the courses.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you know what? As much as I can poo-poo PCPs and chiropractors and orthopedic surgeons, like I've heard some trash recommendations from PTs as well.
We're as bad as anybody.
So we're as bad. Yeah, we are as bad. I mean, I can go with a couple of anecdotes really quick on things I've observed just in the clinic this last week. But what you're saying though, I had a gal yesterday I was working with she's chronic lower back pain, right? No real rhyme or reason. She does have a diagnosis of DDD, but thankfully her pain management physician is like, no, you don't need injections, you don't need a surgery, you just need to move more. So that was a good setup, right? That was a great setup. But she comes in and I'm working with her yesterday. I'm just picking her up for somebody who's out. It's like her 4th visit. And I just said, hey, let's get used to moving. Let me just see how well you're moving. And I asked her I'm like, reach down as though you're going to touch your toes. You can stop wherever you need to, right? She's like, oh, I haven't done that in years. I'm like, I'm sure you have. You just haven't really thought about it. Yeah. She's like, no, I avoid it at all costs, right? And she's telling me.
You have shoes on.
But she's all about it. She's all
that you tied.
But she's like, trust. She's like, well, trust me. And she goes through it and she's just building trust, building comfort, right? We go over, we did some like simple like PVC deadlift patterning, like just slide this up and down your shins, right? Guess what you're doing is a deadlift. She's like, oh, and we had some laughs about. Wait, baby.
That ain't nothing but a peanut, Nick.
I got 2 reps. But she got. I mean, by the time we were done, she told me this anecdote about how she's been working with this same chiro for years. And me, I try to play political with that stuff and be respectful. But in this, whatever this one was telling her, just did not sit with me. And she's like, I see him, for sure 2 to 3 times a month. Sometimes when she's flared up, it's even more frequent. And she's like, and every time I see him after flare up, he's always like, oh, what'd you do now? And I'm like, oh, I hate that bullshit. What'd you do now? Like, it just feeds into this, like, so what you're saying,
your fault,
and all that stuff. You did something wrong. I'm going to fix you.
Yeah.
And maybe it's temporarily, but I'm going to fix you and then don't do anything wrong again.
Yeah.
It's just such bullshit. It's no better word. I'll stop talking.
Yeah.
Oh.
But it's like,
I'm sorry. She recognized the bullshit though by the end because she was even able to laugh at that, how ridiculous that is.
Yeah. But it's like, that's where it starts, right? Is like normalize movement, empower people, right? Like, you didn't do anything wrong, right? There is no bad movement. It's just movements we're maybe not ready for yet, but like you're good. You're gonna be better. You're gonna heal. You're good. And
I was just treating a PT, and same thing. I was like, we went out to. I did a little bit of soft tissue work just to kind of get movement normalized a little bit, take some of that fear away. I said, let's go squat, and she's like, I haven't squatted in 2 years. And I'm like, why?
How'd you get out of bed? How do you get out of bed?
Yeah. And then
how'd you take a
right? Like, yeah, standing. It's gross.
Oh.
No, but it's just, like you said, sometimes that knowledge is, she was of the that generation of PTs where things were putting her SI joint out of place, and she was, thinking that what she was doing was causing a lot of soft tissue problems. And she was afraid that doing that stuff was creating more soft tissue problems, creating more SI problems. And she had been seeing another PT for 2 years, saying, and that PT was doing the same, telling her that same information, like, well, what you're doing is, causing all these problems. Like she was jacked. Like we squatted like a 12-pound medicine ball, and then we did some like Roman deadlifts. Just because she's like, that leg is, I don't trust that leg. I said, well, let's trust it. Like, do a Roman deadlift. If it fails,
you're gonna fall.
Yeah, you're gonna fall on your face.
We're gonna make you stronger. Yeah.
So it was like so cool to be done with the session. And she was like so jacked. She's like, I haven't done this in forever, but think I can go for a run. And I said, well, let's start with intervals. Like I said, how far do you think you can comfortably jog? And she said, well, last time I did, 5 minutes and I was pretty sore afterwards.
And the diagnosis, the working diagnosis was like lower lumbar spine, SI region pain.
Yeah, right. Non-specific low back pain, whatever you want to call it. But she actually came in thinking it was, glute med. She's like, my glute med's killing me, and it's like, well, why do you think that?
Firing. Probably not firing.
Yeah, it's just, it's the same thing. And she said
Jeremy,
that,
I want to
like
talk offline with you.
She's like, I know.
I saw it today.
I know it doesn't fire. Like, I know it's not firing.
How do you stand in single leg stands?
Yeah, I know it's not firing. And like, again, my PT that I've been seeing,
Like,
he pushes on it. It really hurts. So I know that's the spot.
But but couldn't she have some like, common gluteal tendinopathy? I mean, that's possible, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's possibilities there. I just think like the word, like you always hear the words we choose matter, like
they do.
Like that whole idea, like we're not firing. Well, that's not really true, but it could be late. It could be latency in firing though, and it could be weakened. I mean, that stuff's pretty proven.
Points.
That stuff's fairly proven. I'm not going to talk
points.
trigger points, but like,
yeah, it's probably 5 milliseconds slower than the rest of the muscles, but no, but and again, that's a conversation we're different. But just to empower her, and this is somebody that has the knowledge of movement, and like that's the lifestyle stuff. We need to just change that narrative because.
But she was in pain though at one point, and that skews the brain quite a bit.
She was in a lot of pain to start her session, right? And she left just jacked to go and go squat, go do body pump again. So
way to go!
Go to town.
You saved her.
But you know what though?
We'll see what she's like when she comes back after going to body pump and running.
But is there a better feeling than that as a PT?
No, that's
like, when you hear like I have not done that in years.
Oh, that's so good.
To me, that's like the bing. That's what it's about. Yeah. You did it. That was awesome. I didn't do anything. You did it. You just let yourself do it. Right? Yeah. Like that's just I don't know. There's nothing better. Nothing better.
Yeah, it's fun to, I don't know, like Nick said, you almost trick them sometimes by giving them these like simple graded exposure techniques. And you're like, look, you're touching your toes. What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I'll load a bar up on a cable machine and I'm like, just slide the bar down your legs, like you're pushing it to the ground. So they don't think they're bending forward. They think they're pushing, and then they slide it down to the top of their feet and they're like, what?
Yeah. That is cool, man.
Do it without the bar. And then they do it, and it's fine. It's cool stuff like that, but it's just that narrative. I love that lifestyle medicine stuff, Jeremy. We should get certified together. We should be lifestyle buddies.
I like it.
Gurus. Ricky Williams is I heard the other day he's now the Heisman healer, so that could be us.
Cool.
Yeah.
I bet he's got some CBD to help him.
Oh, he'll read your astrology signs for $80. Personal,
man,
or maybe it's
he's always been out there. What a sweet soul though.
Yeah, right.
He just comes across like just the nicest dude.
Oh yeah, pretty laid back as it is. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, in interest of time, I suppose we should move on to our top five.
So we're lifting people up just like comedians can lift people up in a tough time.
There's no better lifestyle medicine than humor.
I agree. I think that's pretty solid. So we kind of threw together a top 5 this week of top 5 stand-up comedians of all time. And we kind of tied this into the late great Norm Macdonald having his final stand-up special being released by Netflix just this last week. And all of us at various levels, Jeremy maybe not as much, but we have an affinity towards stand-up comedians. a heavy respect for that craft and that art. So that brings us to this top 5, my man. Who should kick it off? Who wants to go?
You want to do like a quote unquote Jeremy sandwich? I know he's into that, so I'll start. Jeremy middle, you finish.
Sure.
Yeah. All right.
You should be a stand-up boy.
Yeah. No, this was a fun list to put together.
Yeah.
I think I've always liked stand-up, and
Mhm.
we talked about this before we got on, but like when I was like 5 years old, I watched Gallagher. Like Gallagher stuck in the 60s. Like those stand-up comedies were awesome. My
Yeah.
grandparents had like the HBO Showtime, so I watched a ton of stand-up growing up.
Mhm.
Got out of it a little bit as you become like a middle schooler teen because you're like too cool for stand-up. Other than like there was a few stand-up comedians that like transcended cool. Like we've talked about before. Like Eddie Murphy was cool. Like Chris
He was
Rock.
cool.
Chris Rock was cool. Like he was
Yeah.
like these celebrity stand-up folks, but for the most part,
Yeah.
you kind of move away from it. Got into college. We talked about this on another pod too. Like Dane Cook kind of brought me back a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dane exploded. I mean, he exploded in about 04, 05.
Yeah.
I did my best.
Yeah, like the BK Lounger.
BK
Coops.
chicken sandwich.
Yeah. So I mean that brought me back. I started to listen. We talked about podcasts. I started listening to podcasts about 2007. There was a podcast at that time that I really enjoyed called Red Bar Radio out of Chicago. Had a lot of Chicago-based stand-ups like before, and this was back before they were famous. So like Hannibal Buress and TJ Miller were on there.
Oh,
These
yeah.
guys were just
Yeah.
like
God,
literally
those guys
doing
can
their
slay.
just doing shows out of closets at that point. So that was kind of cool to listen to that and see these guys, Kyle Kinane, people like that. And he actually, the podcast host by I think 2009 opened his own comedy club. So it was really fun to hear like the background stories. And that really kind of got me back into stand up. Some of the
Well, I think
lesser known folks.
There's awesome parallels to stand up with music and how like when I've always heard that said with musicians, right, or bands, like catch them on the way up, catch them when they're the opening act, because that's when they're hungriest.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that could be said, not universally, obviously, but there's a lot to be said for that with comedians as well. You know, you're talking about Hannibal Buress, TJ Miller on the come up, and some of those early specials when they're just, you know that they're just living, breathing it because it matters so much to them. A little bit, I think those are always just they hit a little bit harder than when, you know, somebody's quote unquote made it for a long time. You can kind of see when they have portions that mail it in a little bit.
Hmm.
Or
Well,
they
that
can
was-
just get by on persona like we talked about earlier too.
Yeah, and that was the fun part. Like back then, podcasting was, like I said, the wild, wild west. I mean, 2008, you know, people like they just got on the podcast and talked about whatever. They weren't worried about people hearing it per se. Because right now, you know, people come on Joe Rogan and there's a million other ones. And, you
Mhm.
know, when they come on, it's like when they come on radio too. If you hear these guys on these radio shows, it's always they're live and they're doing their shtick. But back then, man, these guys would go on and they were just talking dumb stuff and they were just like buds hanging out. So it was cool. That really got me into like
Mhm.
the behind the scenes of comedy. Then again, I kind of fell out of that when I quit podcast listening because I didn't commute anymore. But I'd say recently I've gotten back into it again. Just again, we talk about Spark Joy stuff. There's just
Yeah.
cool Netflix shows and they always pop up
Yeah.
now, and YouTube makes it so easy to listen to folks. So it's just fun. So yeah, this was a fun list for me. It was a huge list, lots of folks, but again, narrowing it down to a top 5 probably wasn't too hard for me. I think there's definitely some folks that I would say my top 4 for sure really stand out. They were pretty easy top 4. My 5th one was a little hard. I went back and forth, but my number 5, just a really unique voice in stand up. He's no longer with us, but delivery like no other. And I don't know if anybody will have the same delivery, but my number 5 was Mitch Hedberg. I think he was so unique. I just love that like almost dad humor style. And like I will do his jokes all the time. It's just stuff comes up and he's a kind of an easy one to like impersonate and people get it. And he's just fun, you know, like
Lost way too soon though. Yeah, you're
oh
right.
yeah, way too soon. But like I just love his simple stuff. Like
Mhm.
I hate tennis. No matter how good I will ever be at tennis, I will never be as good as a wall. Like it's just like
Yeah.
that funny delivery, you know? Like,
Yeah. Well, I've heard it was met like the perfect example. Like you said, dad humor.
yeah.
It's like dad humor meets like stoner humor.
Mhm.
Weed. Yeah.
Like big brain
exactly.
stoner, because you just you've spent way too much time thinking about this, right? But his
Yeah.
delivery worked, and you're right on that. I agree.
Well, and you just waited, like you just knew it was going to be this deadpan delivery, and it
Yeah.
was short jokes. You know, he never built up these long stories really, and I think that was part of like he had this huge fear of public speaking. I don't know if it went as far as agoraphobia, but pretty close. So that's why he's like always this like very sharp delivery, very quick. The glasses, the long hair.
Mhm.
You know, it's just I love his stuff. I could sit around with my buddies and just do Hedberg jokes all day. Like they're just awesome. That his
Yeah.
worldview was cool. You know, he was a lot like Stephen Wright for me. Both those guys are kind of similar, like that deadpan,
Oh yeah.
quick jokes and dry humor. I love that guy. So it's my number 5 is definitely my most off popular beaten path comedian on my list.
You think so? You think so? I think
most
he's
people
fairly
know him, most
legendary.
people respect him, but I don't think most
He's
people would put him
legendary.
up, you know.
Kind of lives in lore. Yeah.
Yeah.
As a like a what could have been. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good one though.
That's my number
Jeremiah.
I wonder what his longevity would have been though with that delivery. I don't know.
Oh, you could so
Just me.
he had like the fast track to being like a sitcom dude, or like
Yeah.
you know, side actor in a movie. I mean, he could have made that thing work, you know,
Yeah,
that shtick.
But you know, his observational humor will last a long time though. I mean, Seinfeld's still doing it 40 years later.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
You guys like Seinfeld? Is he on your list?
no, he's a he's a
He just
comedian.
didn't do it for me.
He's the guy that
Exactly. Same.
when the
Just didn't
80s
do it
hit
for me.
big, he was the guy. You know, that's there. You got to say something about Seinfeld. Like when people think of stand up, maybe not as much now, but probably from 80 to 2000, like Seinfeld was the guy he thought of. I mean, he just laid stand up out, you know.
You're saying 8? No, not 8. You mean 90, right?
Yeah, you know, he was pretty big in the 80s. I mean, you know, Seinfeld, the TV show started what, 89, 90? So
Was
I mean,
it
he was
that-
already a
that
name.
early, huh?
I don't know.
But I
Let
don't
me
know. I think some other people
produce it.
dominated the 80s, my boy. But yeah. Well,
But
let's get
he,
this
you know, he
Jeremy
changed it. I
sandwich
feel like
going.
he ushered it in that 80s golden age, but
He ushered it.
he ushered it.
Yeah.
I'll check it up. Go to town, Jeremy. What do you got?
'Cause I think somebody else, I think a couple other guys dominated the 80s. But
90
But-
was Seinfeld.
Yeah, I would give my guy probably the 80s. I went number 5 was Eddie Murphy. This was, believe it or not, some of like the earliest stand-up that I saw. It was not that early. I saw it in, like the late 90s, early 2000s.
Okay.
Man, I think I saw a stat one time that he used the F-bomb like 300 times, and it was either raw or delirious, but it was like yeah, my parents weren't going for that. Man,
Well, my parents didn't hurt them, Jeremy.
right.
I was just saying that was like the hidden movie. Like my parents could see that I had VHS.
That
I
was
put
good
that
stuff.
cassette into my Weird Al Yankovic tape box.
Weird Al.
You know what's crazy though is like as
So
out
go some
there-
bits. What bits worked for you?
I don't think I could say any of them on here. You mentioned
We're not
Goony
edited,
Goo-
Jeremy.
You mentioned
Goony
Goony Goo
Goo
Goo. Goony Goo Goo. But man, he's got so much like inappropriate, like he apologizes for it, like right,
Yeah.
like some of the more like
Yeah,
homophobic
yeah.
stuff, or some of his bits,
Especially
on slave-
Delirious. I
on
think Delirious
slavery.
was like pretty heavy.
But you just like, man, when like he's rolling, that stuff is just so funny. Maybe it makes me a bad person because I laugh at it. But
Oh,
no,
cool.
it's he was good. He was cool, like you said at the time. Like, and now it's like Daddy Daycare 4.
Yeah. It's
you
it's
know,
pretty
it's just
remarkable
the-
to see.
Just
right?
the evolution, right? So,
Mhm.
Eddie Murphy was my number 5.
Yeah.
Good choice,
Very
man.
good choice. Very good
He was
choice.
a rock star. You know, he was.
Yeah.
You know,
Big
even
rock
when he
star, yeah.
came out,
Red
he
leather.
was. Yeah, he was already. He was already too good for stand up when he was doing that. You know, you just kind of knew like, wow, this is a stepping stone. You're just kind of lucky this guy's doing it for the time he's doing it. You
I
know?
don't know if there was a guy who was more talented at what he did. You know, because comedy's hard. I mean, people who've done comedy, it's hard, but
Yeah.
for him to get to the level that he did on multiple platforms, I'm not going to say anymore because I'm going to spoil something. But
Oh,
the dude was unfreaking believable.
is he your number
Especially
one? Is he your number one?
We can talk about it more later.
Especially in the 1980s, Casey, not Jerry Seinfeld.
Jerry Seinfeld,
right.
like he lived in his shadow.
Yeah, it's different. It was rock
Totally
star
different. But that's the thing about comedians, though. Yeah,
I mean,
I don't even. It's funny you
different
say they're both
spheres.
stand-ups, but they don't even seem like the same genre
Yeah.
at all.
Completely different.
What is the deal? Like, what is this?
Yeah,
card,
Seinfeld was
brown.
go to a stand-up show, watch a stand-up show, that go out with your buddies and go to a stand-up comedy show was really huge in the mid to late 80s, where Eddie was different. That was TV specials. That was
like
he's a celebrity, right? I mean, and so I don't know if Eddie did as much for stand-up per se as Jerry did, but Eddie was a bigger personality.
We'll probably argue that one to our death, but
probably.
I also think I'll say the race thing definitely, like, he did more for that. Eddie did for sure, because I think he opened the door for so many more people, and his door was opened by Bill Cosby, whose name talk about the Baltimore comedians, right?
Yeah, but he called Bill Cosby out even back then, though.
That was great, but it wasn't for the same thing. He was calling out for different reasons, but not what Bill, not what eventually took Bill down.
No. But I think he was like,
and Richard
Bill
Pryor,
Cosby isn't the guy you think he is.
And
What's
Richard
in that
Pryor
Jello?
like spawned that.
Yeah.
You can't say the word. But okay, good call. My number 5 is the late great Norm Macdonald. Recently passed. I've seen a handful of his stand-up specials. I like how Casey mentioned observational humor. I mean, he's great at that. He's also great at very witty and dry storytelling. That allows you. It's a slow burn with Norm. Like, you got to be in it. You got to be paying attention, and then when he finally drops the punchline, it's pretty damn good. And will always get you laughing. I know it wasn't specifically stand-up, but his role on Weekend Update for so long on Saturday Night Live was basically stand-up in itself.
Yeah.
Right. He's up there by himself with the addition of some props as like visual aids, with stuff coming his way. And I thought he actually absolutely dominated that. Had a great way of laughing at himself and everybody else around him and those things that were going on in the world. So guy was fantastic. Really, really good. I can't wait. I want to check out the new special that I believe, if I've heard right, it's like he recorded himself in his home.
Yep, I started watching it the other night. It's already out. Just came out.
Is it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, it came out like Tuesday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, I started watching it. It's, he recorded it. Obviously, it'd be like me sitting in front of a computer telling jokes. So it was a little hard to watch at times. The jokes were still good, but it's different.
Are you saying Are you saying you're better?
I'm different. I like a Jerry and Eddie Murphy. No, you put me just by myself in front of this computer, it'd be absolutely horrible. But
I don't believe that.
It just doesn't have that same energy. Even though those specials, you don't get the crowds a whole lot.
You
but
need the
it's just
crowd.
different.
You need the crowd. I hear you.
Because some of those jokes, he does like talk to the crowd, and then just plays off of it like they were responding. So some of that stuff's just weird. I mean, but I'm lucky to get a chance to watch it anyway. So it's still
one of the when you talk about the crowd, and I'll have a couple coming up here, but when they say something that's maybe more taboo, which like so much is now, and
everything.
What I love now with a handful of these comedians, it works so well when the crowd gives a little like, and they're like, shut up. And it's just a joke, I like that. It just adds another element to it,
Yeah, I think that's cool too. Yeah, I do like that stuff. So
interactive.
Yeah, good number. Good number 5. I feel like I like Norm a little more for Saturday Night Live and some of his TV stuff, and like his interviews like Letterman and things like that are just legendary. But
those were great too, the interviews.
So good number 5. My number 4 already rolling into heavy hitters on my list, but this was one of those guys, HBO Showtime, when I was a kid. Again, you'll probably see a theme for some of these comedians I should not have been watching. But this guy was the first guy that I was like, this is stand-up. This is what it should be. This guy is smart. He's intelligent. Like the jokes are funny. He's put effort in. It wasn't Gallagher who was just smashing watermelons. Even at like a 6-7-year-old, I could recognize like the complete difference between that. Andrew Dice Clay, Sam Kinison, and then my number 4 was George Carlin. I love. Me and my brother watched his specials, his stand-up. It just laughed and laughed. I mean, he was animated when he was younger. He was all over the stage. He was not a sit on a stool comedian. But he brought these big ideas together too. When he got older, it was a lot more political, and but he just created these like scenarios, and he painted cool pictures, and I just love that stuff. I don't know if I can pick like a favorite Carlin. The things you can't say on TV is solid, but that's actually not one of my favorite bits of his. But I guess I loved his attitude. I loved, again, he was an asshole. He was smug, but like he was likable, and he just had this like undertone of like, I'm actually not a shitty person. Like, it's just I play it on TV. Like, I loved his persona.
It's like the whole character was like a bit.
Yeah, right. Just this crotchety guy who wasn't really crotchety. It was like a hippie, but not a hippie at all, right? Like he was not a hippie, but he had that look, and he questioned authority, but he also understood authority. So it was just he's cool. My number 4, he's got a ton of good stuff. It was sad when he passed.
I had him on my short list of 17.
Yeah.
The thing I struggled with, and I don't have him in my 5, and I struggle with him and like guys like Rodney Dangerfield that I grew up with, and just how much of it though is really like, does it really hold up now, or was it more nostalgia that I'm loving because I loved it then, right? And when you go back and when you watch it again, you're like, I don't know if it holds up as well. That's how I feel about George Carlin, I guess. But he definitely, he paid another guy who paved the way. But.
Oh yeah, for sure. He he built off the Lenny Bruce stuff, and
which I'm not a Lenny Bruce guy either, but I respect the heck out of what he was able to do.
I don't know who that is.
He was he died a long time ago, but he was the comedian that got,
60s.
He got arrested a ton for being so vulgar, and it wasn't really vulgar, but the 60s was a lot different than they are now. So it was a big free speech. Say what you want on stage. Yep. Don't worry about what people think. His stand-up's actually not that great, but it was just what he did for comedy.
Yeah, he's considered like, and he also suffered with a lot of depression and a lot of drug abuse and stuff like that. So I mean, he kind of showed that side of the business too, which a lot of comedians actually battle too.
Right? Isn't that just odd? Right? Like maybe not, but it's just like how many of these people that make like joy their life, but then they struggle with that other side of it. It's just like, I don't know.
It's pressure.
I'm with you.
It's caused by pressure.
It's a lot of pressure.
It's like
a lot of pressure.
It's hard work to make people laugh. Like people always said, like, Chris Farley like killed himself just trying to be funny all the time.
Well, and to think of like going up in front of people and making yourself vulnerable and cutting open your wounds every night, that there's something to be said for that too. Like you have to look into yourself, and you have to address these things, but in some ways you have to play them off. You have to find a way to make them funny, and some of that stuff's not. So dealing with it, it seems like you're dealing with it, but really in actuality you're kind of
reliving it.
And it's like a PTSD person going through it over and over and over again every day, every night. And then you compound that with just the stand-up scene, like late nights, booze, cigarettes, drugs.
It's hyper competitive. I mean, you're driven, and it's very cannibalistic. Like we've talked about before. Like people get accused of stealing other jokes all the time, but it's almost irrelevant now. It's like what truly is original anymore? It's just somebody's spin on something, right?
That's
I mean, if you make fun of sitting in security at an airport, it's probably not something you stole. Like we've all been there. Like we find funny things, but
Well, J-Bone, what's your number?
Aren't you guys excited to hear this? You guys mentioned him earlier on my number 4 list. You guys are so freaking eclectic. You guys are bringing up comedians I've never heard of.
I grew up in North Dakota. We didn't have shit else to do.
Agreed.
Yeah. My number 4 for me was Dane Cook in the early 2000s. And
I loved his delivery. He had like 2 years where he was just straight fire, and then he started doing movies, and that got poor pretty quick.
Mhm.
But
I agree.
again, he had a really like quick fire run. Like I don't say bless you, I say God bless you, because I'm not the Lord.
Mhm.
Right? Like I
Yeah.
mean, it's like little like things like that. Losing my mind sounds so pessimistic. I prefer the term winning my insanity. Right? Like it's just he had a really great run there, and it was just again, and just like it's probably a timepiece thing for me. I was like
Yeah.
sophomore in college. I gotta go get this new DVD. So it's in a binder somewhere.
Yeah.
But no, I really enjoyed his stuff. So yeah, that's about all I can say. He went downhill.
huge, man.
Like, yeah, he was so huge. It was just like you talk about just like this flame of a career. I mean, it couldn't have been, I maybe don't know his early stuff, but I mean, it couldn't have been more than 5 years, right? Like his
Mhm.
like start to finish.
Basically, I think about
Uh,
01, 02, he started
Like
cracking in, and then
3 big albums, maybe.
by 2005, he was like topping the charts. I mean, he had like a double comedy album that was a
Mhm.
recording of the stand-up. Was it called Retaliation? Maybe
It was
I'm
called
not-
Retaliation.
Sounds familiar.
And I mean, for that to be like it was like a top 3 or 4 album that came out. I mean,
Yeah.
that's ridiculous. That was unheard of at that time. So
Yeah.
to hear, I mean, but he probably, to your point, he probably exploded too fast, too soon. And again, there's so much to that genre where they just shit all over him. Like other comedians just at some point he just became super enemy number 1 to them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
there-
they
and I've
made
heard
it.
now
They made it seem like,
now
oh,
we're
you
into-
like Dane Cook, you don't know comedy.
Yeah.
You know?
And now we're in the now it's far enough in our past where we're in like this Dane Cook apology era where now
Yeah.
if your comedians say what you're saying, like he was better than people give him credit for, and you should have respected him more when he was on top, right? It's just a weird dynamic, and you hear that with other niche entertainment industries too. Like people, like unless you come up slow and your build is super slow, everybody thinks you went up too fast. You don't deserve it. When your audience becomes more younger and more female than male, then you suck too, right? It's not as good.
Yep.
It's just these weird, and you see the same thing in music. You see it in other celebrity states. So interesting.
Yeah, what I really enjoyed about Dane Cook, I think that I enjoy now more looking back on it, was like his high energy that he was able to control. Because you see high energy comedians that like go off on a rail and you're like, oh, it's kind of a shtick and like it's annoying. But like he would tell these stories and he would just sit up here this whole time and he would go off on a tangent for 10 seconds to tell something like the God bless you thing. Like, and then he was back to the joke, right?
Yeah.
Or some of these comedians
He
that
could
have this
pull it.
like,
Yeah. He
you know,
veered out of his jokes a lot. Yeah.
Yep.
He sidebarred.
Yeah, and they were, and I don't even know if it was planned or not, but it was so smooth how he could go in and out, tell a quick funny thing, come back to the story. He just never brought it down. I love that about him. I think it was just one of those things where it was a lot of stories. That's what he did. He was stories. They were funny stories, but I suppose at some point, like, you know, it's like listen to your buddy's stories over and over again. Like, yeah, you know, his re-listenability wasn't as great, maybe, I don't know, and like you couldn't sit around with your buddies necessarily and tell his jokes because it was just like telling somebody's story. But
Yeah, makes me want to go back and listen.
yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. Like, I bet I'm ready to go listen to those again and still enjoy them. I laughed my
I bet
butt
you'll
off.
laugh. Yeah. I bet you'll laugh.
Dude.
Yeah.
I loved it.
I
Like,
can't pull into anybody's driveway and back out without thinking of him. Because I think he has a bit about coming out and
I'll
stabbing
kill
somebody
you,
in the
yeah.
jaw.
Yeah.
Yeah. He also hated watermelon. Was it? No. What, he had a Jolly Rancher bit, like if you say sour apple,
What? Yeah.
you're an idiot, you know? Those are just funny things like that. But solid, dude. Good job, number 4. My number 4, more newer, at least newer to me, Nate Baratsky.
Ooh.
Michelle kind of turned me on to him.
Never heard of this dude.
So he's got a few specials on comedy or not on Netflix, and they're actually super clean. They're rated G.
What?
And he's a fantastic, which is so rare in that stand-up comedian.
Look at you, Daddy Daycare.
Yeah.
And he is
He'd
well,
prefer
you know, when
Eddie's
you
new
got 4,
stuff.
we got 4 beautiful kids running around, but you don't want them to necessarily be hearing Dave Chappelle's latest special,
Or do
Yeah, come on. You were listening to Eddie at 5. Didn't hurt you.
So you just got to be a little cautious, but his stuff's clean and great. Again, Mike Bomb and theme. Casey mentioned storytelling a couple of times. I mean, I said that with Norm. I love stories.
What's the name?
Nate Barat or Bargatze.
Oh, okay.
BARG. Yeah.
I got you.
ATZ. So check him out. He sells, and he's one you gotta watch because he sells stuff with his eyes better than like anybody I've ever seen too. He just has like these blank stares that work. So check it out. He's already up he cracked my top 5. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, can't say I've ever listened to him. I'm
gonna check him out.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's like a good.
All right, Case, what's your
comedy? My number 3.
What's your number 3?
Yeah, roll through. No introduction needed on this one. Dave Chappelle is my number 3. I think he was, that pre-Chappelle show stuff was pretty solid. I mean, I listened to that stuff. He had funny stories, high animation. I love the like nervous energy where he always seemed like afraid of stuff, but then he'd always like come with the cool guy stuff. Like, when his friend is like in a street race, guys, he's like, I'm gonna race him, Dave. He's like, don't race him, in his mind. And he's like, but I looked at him, I said, sometimes a brother's got to race. Like, I just love that delivery stuff. He is so animated. And I think he's still doing it today. Like his new stand-up stuff. I mean, it's controversial for sure.
It's good.
Where you stand on that stuff, but there's still pretty good jokes, and I think he's still delivering to this day. So there's some longevity to it. And then, again, you throw Chappelle show in there, and
mad respect for him, like being controversial, right? Like in today's like kind of climate, I'm like, I don't know, to that talk, I guess, like that's what comedy is so cool to me. It's like, even if it like, this isn't stand-up, right? But South Park, right? They offend everybody, and it's hilarious. At least me, it's funny.
Yeah,
really funny. So
you can put a mirror back on people too. You should laugh at yourself, but a lot of society's lost that.
And you hope that like that's like outside of the jokes, like that's like the bigger piece of comedy.
God,
is just that ability.
I grew up. Casey talked about HBO. I had a friend. We were rich enough to have HBO at my house, but
we weren't either.
It was my grandparents. You can talk to them.
But they have we watched Def Comedy Jam, right?
Oh yeah,
which was predominantly African American. I'm not 90%, but I'm guessing at least 50% of those bits were making fun of white people. We would laugh. Like we'd laugh at, they'd always do the white bad boys. And
that's how we sound.
And I loved it. I'm like, okay, I can laugh at that, right? And we dance really stiff and look like idiots, right?
We do
have rhythm. Great.
We do.
I mean, like, let's do more of this because we could all use a little humility in the world and then move on. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world. So,
yeah, I would say the same thing. Chappelle, like whether it's a stand-up or his show, like his stuff directed at white males is some of his funniest stuff to me. I mean, I just and I would echo Jeremy, not so much like make fun of people, but like just fighting for comedy. We talked about Lenny Bruce, when he was doing that stuff, he knew he was going to get arrested, and Dave knows that like there's a huge chance based on what he's doing, he may never get a Netflix special again, but he's still doing it. It's because that's comedy, that's freedom of speech, that's people laughing at themselves and finding the joy in life.
Yeah, I won't say anymore. I know we're already going long. Yep. But you're number 3. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, all right. I can trim it too, but I like in terms of my number 3, it's Chris Rock. Again, this is like a timepiece thing for me, probably more than anything. But again, like always had great energy, like bigger, blacker, never scared. Like those were to me just absolutely hilarious. And I like in that time frame, like kind of the same thing, probably less for Dane Cook, but like you just waited for his next stuff to drop. Like you were just on like kind of like pins and needles, like, wow, when's he gonna come out with new stuff? This was hilarious. So that'd be my number 3. It's
Chris Rock?
God, I don't
Stand-up
think anybody's mentioned
celebrity.
it. I hope I don't spoil anything for anybody, but the guy so we talked Eddie Murphy a little bit, and you're talking Chris Rock, but the guy, there was a guy missing in the middle there. I think he gets forgotten about that. That was
Who you
Martin
got?
Lawrence. Martin
Oh,
Lawrence,
yeah.
kind of in that time.
You are. You're right.
He's not in my top 5, but I think he gets kind of underrated for what he did in the stand-up game back in the early 90s as he was cracking in. I know Eddie brought both those guys in, so that was another cool thing. But keeping things moving on, and where I wanted to kind of just trim things up or keep it moving, my number 3 was Dave Chappelle. And everything that, kind of echoing everything Casey said. The dude's fearless. That was the word I wrote down on my notes. And I think one of the most interesting aspects to kind of the world of stand-up comedians is when his most recent special was really getting a lot of, social media, Twitter backlash. People were calling for it to be pulled off of Netflix and yanked. And you had this like massive majority of stand-up comedians that stood up for him and said, you can't censor comedy, right? This is comedy. And then you have this like small subgroup. There was just, I won't even name them, but a couple of comedians who were like, no, he should apologize and he should clean this up, right? And the rest of the comedians just proceeded to shit all over those people and were like, shut up, like that's not comedy, right? That's not what this is about. And if you simply don't like it, that's what maybe the final thing I'll say. If you don't like it, just don't watch it.
Don't watch it.
Like, don't watch it. When did it become a thing where it's not enough for me not to watch it and say I don't really care for that? No, I gotta go and like freaking break out the pitchforks and the fire and try to get everybody in the world to never watch it, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are you afraid of? What are you truly afraid of?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's
Do you think anybody, we went through some terrible stuff last year in the country, and we got another shootings happen, You think anything was ever driven by a stand-up special? When they try to connect so many dots to like hate, and that word hate gets thrown around so much, it's so silly. It's like laugh a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's good to have people push the boundaries in anything. And it's like, I agree with you wholeheartedly. If it's not for you, you don't have to listen to it. You really don't.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I stopped listening to Limp Bizkit by album 2. I mean, it's like
I haven't
stopped. Them dad vibes, man. Get back into it. New stuff's fire.
I'll check it out. I'm just saying, you can just move on then.
My number 2. My number 2, really a hated individual. I would say now it's kind of hurt his reputation a little bit. But when he was on top, he was, I would say, one of the most clever comedians out there. He was smart, witty. His stuff was funny. Still to this day, I can listen to that stuff. But it's Louis C.K. Man, when he was was on top, he was on top, and he was a comedian's comedian. He was the guy that when he was on top, everybody was like, he's the best in the game. Like what he does, and it's interesting to see the evolution of his career because his early stuff was pretty bad. Like he was not a very good comedian, really, until he started having kids, and he started to develop like these stories about kids, but he was pushing the border. We talked about Stephen King and how he writes and like he's not afraid to hurt kids. Like Louis C.K. was not afraid to tell jokes about his kids, inappropriate stuff, and it was just like shocking but super funny, like his shtick about taking his kids to the park and being like, I wish the pedophiles would just leave me a note and be like, I'll drop them off in an hour. Like at least I know where my kids are then, like no
But
dark.
do you ever, with him in particular,
it was just
now,
funny.
do you look back and do you say, where was anything blurred in his life? In his life?
What do you mean by that?
Well, the way that, I don't know, some of those things when they push the boundaries like that, and then it bleeds into that, stuff comes out in personal life and you hear about, different deviances, we'll say. Do you think does that diminish it for you at all over time? Do you look back and think, maybe, God, was he ever telling the truth?
Was there?
I don't know if for most of it. I mean, he definitely did a lot of shticks about obviously masturbating.
Not pedophilia.
No,
but to Jeremy's point,
okay.
It wasn't pedophilia.
Yeah, it was. His deal was he brought young comedians in back to his room and would masturbate in front of them, and which he
it's actually
did tell jokes about too.
Of the new Ricky Gervais has a new special, and it's a punchline of when I was in act. It hits really well.
So I mean, it was one of those things where he was abusing his power with young comedians. But Yeah, I don't
It
know.
seems really weird.
His stuff doesn't diminish too much for me based on that, I
Okay.
guess. But
No, and I'm not even judging. I'm not saying it's
No.
got to be judged. I'm just asking that from a friend standpoint. Like
yeah,
sometimes,
from a personal
sometimes I
standpoint,
do
no.
just look back and I'm like, I don't know if I can like that.
I'm gonna judge him for that going forward. I did not.
Lots
know
of
that.
people did. I mean,
Yeah.
his career tanked obviously because of it. So
Well, look at, I mean, we got the Bill Cosby comment, right? I'm sure he's not anybody's top 5 here, but you know, if you're being intellectually honest, then there was a time period where he was very important for comedy in general, in a lot of
Cosby
ways.
Show is one of my favorite shows growing up. Hard to
It
watch.
really
now.
was. I think it
Hard to
broke down a
watch
lot
now.
of boundaries.
Yeah.
I think it broke. I mean, it was super important for it,
Huxtables.
and it's set. And this goes to the bigger. I know we're sidebarring off on like cancel culture and stuff. We've already dipped it that way, but it breaks down that. And yeah, he did this to himself. That needs to be named, right?
Mhm.
But he did it over and over to other people. But all the all the good that probably did for a lot of cultural issues, you know, through the whole 1980s, for an entire decade.
Yeah.
It's just being wiped off now. It's like just pretend it never happened, pretend it never existed.
Yeah.
You're like I grew up and totally thought that, you know, African American could be a very astute doctor and be a funny guy.
And a
Right?
lawyer.
Like,
I mean, his wife was a lawyer.
His wife's a
I mean,
lawyer. Felicia Rashad, yeah.
like how
I mean,
powerful of a show for kids. They lived in a beautiful house. They were the pillars of the community, right? I mean,
Yep,
that
yep.
area was built around
Well
them.
respected.
So, yeah.
So
Yep.
Times
Louis
change,
C.K. not so much, but
yeah.
hilarious comedian.
That was your number 2, right?
My number 2?
He was not
Right.
a pillar of the community.
No, not at all.
Jeremy.
He did
You're
stick with his
right.
pillar, but that was about it.
Guys, I don't know if this counts, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
And you put it up high. Put it up high for a question.
Radical.
My number 2 is Adam Sandler.
Okay.
And I don't know if you can take this as stand up, but again, it's a timepiece thing for me. What the hell happened to me? The album.
That's a comedy album.
Comedy album.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go with it.
I'll allow it.
This is like
Sustained.
8th grade. We had a friend that was like a year older than us. I think maybe to a held back situation, but we would drive to school every day, like in his car, and that cassette tape, we listened to that every morning.
And you would do the goat voice, right?
Yeah, the goat
Yes,
voice.
so
Could not.
funny. I mean, you got
I didn't know you were gonna button hook me.
join in the cult, ode to my car,
Yeah.
the excited southerner, all the different bits he does, the goat, yeah, the Hanukkah song, Steve mother effing Polychronopoulos.
Yeah.
Ah, man, that to me, sex or weightlifting, do it for mama. Like, though, I don't know. Like, that was a coming of age thing for me.
Yeah.
And he, oh man, as dumb as he is, that gave me laughs for at least 18 months, like every morning.
That's a good
You could listen
ROI.
to the same
I can't
thing.
put him as I can't put him as a stand-up, but I agree with you. We
Man.
we came in from a storm on Monday, and Connor was watching Happy Gilmore.
Oh, I just
Yeah.
rewatched it the other day. So
And I'm like, man, you can't deny that whatever that shtick that he had going in the mid '90s was fire. I mean, it was working,
he did the same thing every time, right?
and it eventually
was-
just wore thin. Yeah,
It was very Farley-esque. I mean, it was the same character
yeah,
over and over and over, but you still
with a
like,
different funny voice.
yeah.
So, Hubie Halloween, he's still doing it. It's-
Yeah. That one does not hold up well.
but you're right. There's some good stuff back then, and he did
Yeah,
some
that
stand-up,
album
too.
was killer for sure. Yeah, his early stand-up is, it's not great, but I mean he hit the stage. The movie Funny People, I think is a cool movie. I really enjoy that movie, and that's about stand-up and shows his respect for the business anyways.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate you allowing me to have him on my list.
Good
We'll
choice.
allow
That
it.
album
We'll allow it.
killed me for sure.
We keep it spicy. We
Overruled.
keep it spicy.
So I keep
My
bringing
number-
it. That's
my number-
$14 well spent.
My number 2 is my
I'll
other
Venmo you.
contemporary guy. Oh, you're still talking Venmos. Number 2, more contemporary guy. He's really hit with me lately, the last couple of years. Joe Coy, if you're familiar with Joe Coy.
You are right.
Really, he's got at least one on Netflix. Had a few on Comedy Central. Hilarious stuff. I think he really, like any of these guys, he minds his like upbringing so well. Stories of his mom, his parents. He's Filipino, so his mom. He just plays these stories of his mom and just portray. So she's become like this recurring bit in all of his comedy specials, and just that works, right? Because he's almost created a character in his own mother that he can reference and tell a new story, and you already know it. You've already kind of invested in this character emotionally, and it hits really good. Really awesome stuff. I'd recommend it if you haven't seen it. I think one of them's called Coming in Hot.
Question for
He's
you.
got live in Seattle. So
I'm producing this live. So can you tell me what his real name is?
It's Joe, J-O, and
that.
Coy is K-O-Y.
No, that's a stage name. He is Joseph Glenn Herbert Sr.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Yeah, because he always.
I just thought it was a fun fact.
That's a fun
Joe
fact.
Coy sounds way better.
Yeah.
Great.
Much shorter. Fits on the like the marquee easier. Yeah. But his bits about his mom's always calling him Joseph. And she's mean and ornery. It's awesome though. It works. It's so good. So check it out if you haven't seen it.
I'm going to.
Yeah, give it a listen.
Good enough to be my number 2.
Yeah. Moving on to my number 1. Yeah, he was the 80s man. But surprisingly,
he was not Jerry Seinfeld.
Not Jerry Seinfeld, Eddie Murphy. He's my number 1.
Yeah.
I was like you, Nick, man. I had the cassettes. Me and my brother would pop that in the player when our parents weren't around, and just his energy, he
Inappropriate.
Yeah, 100%. Totally inappropriate, but it was kind of cool because he like had these like super adult stories, swore all the time, but they were about him as a kid. So we're like as kids, and we were like relating because we're like, oh, we're little kids, like Ice Cream Man, and yeah, like oh, your wife is a Sasquatch, like that's stuff that was funny. Like it was sophomoric, but told in a pretty fun, energetic way. He was so likable. That laugh of his, I mean, he was fun, man. He was a rock
than
star.
Freaking life. Bigger than life.
Oh yeah, he's nothing more than probably we've already said when Jeremy talked about him at number 5. But I just don't know if there's another stand-up that was that level of celebrity and just awesome. And like I said, you knew right away he was too big to be stand-up. He's one of those you're just lucky to capture
Hollywood.
Yeah. Caught lightning in a bottle because he was willing to do that stuff. I mean, he was so young on Saturday Night Live, so young when he was doing stand-up. To see a guy that young,
when he came back at his peak and did Raw, which was also like unheard of. Like nobody was doing that.
Comes back to it, yeah.
So just probably never be anybody like him again. You just forget how young and talented he was when you look at that early stuff and realize how young he was, because he just grew up in the spotlight and he just took it for granted a little bit, I guess, now where he's at now.
Definitely. Yeah.
My number 1, Eddie,
I want to talk to you. Man.
That's good.
You go ahead, because I get to finale it up.
My number 1 is Chappelle. Man, I just went back and rewatched it. Like again, a timepiece thing. Like Chappelle Show was happening. You're like right in the middle of college. Hilarious, right? Just a fun time. But I recently went back, like within the last year and a half, went back and rewatched the Chappelle Show, and in terms of like his Prince skits, right? Like again, maybe this isn't stand up, but like game blouses, the racial draft. Oh my goodness!
Yeah, well, for shizzle.
So funny. Like
always wanted to say this.
And they select Condoleezza Rice. Like, oh my gosh, that it's just hilarious.
Yeah.
And there's like many more skits that I don't feel comfortable mentioning, but just pushed the envelopes in terms of again, just like what's considered funny. Like obviously race was a big thing for him. His latest stand-up things, like again, I appreciate it in terms of the fact that like it was like at the peak of cancel culture, and he's coming in and be like, yeah, I'm gonna do me. Like this is who I am. And like in terms of and I think that's what comedy should be. So again, if you don't like it, don't listen to it. But man, he to me is a genius. And then he walked away. You talk about like coming back and doing a special at the head of your career. He literally walked away. And he's like, I'm out. See ya. Like I forget what they said the number was, like 50 million, 100 million, whatever it was on the table.
I think it was 100. I think that was the number, 100, right?
He's just like, I'm done for now. And that's pretty crazy too. So that's like, to me, like you go, well, that was like a true love for him. It's not just like he wasn't in it for the proverbial bag, right? Like he was just doing it because he loved it, and he didn't love it anymore. So he's like, I'm out. So, but he's still really funny, I think.
Yeah.
So
Louis C.K. was not given that opportunity
because he was doing really bad things.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. No, he's fearless. He's defiant.
He's a genius.
And there's just something like there's something to be said about that in this era, right? And that he's been able to withstand it thus far.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, my number one, no surprise, is Eddie Murphy. I think since 1987, all anybody can do is really just try to chase what he did with Delirious and Raw. I mean, to be able to hold massive arenas like in his hand, get him to pop like he did, and just erupt. And it's still, some of it definitely more Delirious too. You look back and 40 years down the road, obviously things have changed, right? Yeah. Some of his jokes, he's got a bit on Mr. T that doesn't hold up as well anymore, but I'll still chuckle.
You can't say that F word anymore. That's not.
No,
can't say it.
No,
he can't say it.
We're minimally censored. But keep it to yourself.
Yes. It's a time capsule. And you get to Raw, which I always felt like Raw was the special one because I mean Delirious is younger, but Raw is like him at the absolute peak. And to be able to pull off something that I would think is superior to Delirious. I think his storytelling is better. I think it's tighter. I think it's more mature in a lot of ways. He's dealt with more by that point. He's dealt with fame. He's got the stories of how he has to go to Africa to get a wife who's not going to steal half his money, and it's all going, and just the way he tells it, there's humor every step along the way. You're not just waiting for the punchline. I mean, he's so good every so direction. And then he swerves you because once she meets like your buddy's wife, the buddy's wife screws everything up for you. And I don't know what, he ties it into Janet Jackson and everything like that. Like, what has he done for you lately? I mean, he was just so good. And nothing more needs to be said that really can be said on our pod.
Correct.
Our fairly PG-13 pod.
Yeah, we need an after hours pod for the pod, but
an after hours pod.
Yeah, but that brings us to the end. Too late for an after pod. We went a little long, but I thought we had pretty fun times. So thanks again, everybody, for listening. As always, you got stuff we want to talk about, top fives, hit us up at ptshoptalk@gmail.com. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, Facebook. Just search PT Shop Talk. Until next time, I'm Casey Hansen, and with me as always is
Nick Dolan.
Get her done. Jeremy How did he not
always
hit any top five
signature?
Wasn't even in my 17.
Either.
I'm not gonna lie.
Just didn't do it for me.
Who was the? I can't even think of his name right now. The You Might Be a Redneck guy. There was a time where he was
Jeff
pretty.
Foxworthy.
Yeah, the Fox was big
His-
into my
his-
life for a little bit.
He's not
He had some
Gator
good
done.
stuff.
No,
No,
but
no.
same vein of those guys. Like
He was
Foxworthy
pre
had a
Gator done.
spot. Yeah, he
He
had a
was
spot.
pre.
All right, see everybody next time.